Today, we're diving into the core ideas of Isabel Wilkerson's landmark book, Caste. It's a work that offers a really powerful, and for many, a brand new way of looking at the hidden structures that shape our society. So let's get right into it. Wilkerson kicks things off with this incredible image. It's Hamburg, Germany, 1936. You've got this huge crowd of shipyard workers, and every single arm is stretched out in the Nazi salute. Except for one. One man. August Landmesser stands there, arms defiantly folded across his chest.
He's the only one.
You know, that photo just begs the question, what does it take to be that person, to see what everyone else is just going along with? Well, for Landmesser, the system had become personal. He'd fallen in love with a Jewish woman, something that was forbidden by Nazi law. His own life experience gave him a lens that let him see past the mass hysteria. And that right there is the heart of Wilkerson's work, learning to see these invisible structures that quietly run our lives. So how does a Pulitzer Prize-winning author land on the word caste to describe America? Well, her journey actually started with her first epic book, The Warmth of Other Suns, which is all about the Great Migration. Now, as she was writing this story about millions of African Americans fleeing the brutal Jim Crow South, she noticed something odd. There was one word she almost never used, a word you'd think would be on every single page, and that word was racism. And here's why. For Wilkerson, the word just wasn't big enough. It didn't feel sufficient. It couldn't capture the sheer scale, the intricate, multi-layered, totally fixed nature of the system she was describing. She realized she was writing about something much deeper, something more structural. She needed a new word, or maybe a very, very old one. And that search led her to the framework that now defines her work, the idea of caste. She argues it's the underlying grammar of American society, the hidden set of rules that dictates how we all interact and where we fit. So what is caste exactly? Wilkerson's definition is key. She calls it an artificial construction, a rigid, embedded ranking of human value. This isn't about personal feelings or prejudice. It's about structure. It's about how power, resources, and respect are handed out, all based on what group you're born into. Now, this is probably the most important point she makes. Caste and race are not the same thing. She says caste is the underlying infrastructure. It's the bones of the house. Race, in the American context, is the visible cue. It's the skin. It's the shorthand our society uses to know where someone is supposed to fit in this invisible hierarchy. And this quote just nails it. Think about it. Race is the language, the words we all see and use every day. But caste is the grammar. It's the unspoken set of rules that gives all those words their power and their meaning. It's the sentence structure that we all just subconsciously know. Now, to really build her case, Wilkerson does something fascinating. She looks beyond America. She compares our system to two of the most infamous hierarchies in history, the ancient caste system of India and the terrifyingly efficient system of Nazi Germany. And by laying them side by side, she shows that they all share a common underlying architecture. So what is the shared architecture? What's the common blueprint? Wilkerson breaks it all down into what she calls the 8 foundational pillars of caste. These are the core beliefs that hold any system like this together. That's right, 8 of them. Think of these as the load-bearing walls inside that house of caste. They're the principles that have kept the whole structure standing, rigid and strong, often for centuries. So let's just touch on a few of these, because they're absolutely crucial. First, you've got heritability. Basically, you're born into your rank, and that's that. Then there's endogamy. These are powerful, strict rules against marrying outside of your group. There's this idea of purity versus pollution, where the lower caste is seen as somehow contaminating. And of course, an occupational hierarchy, which makes sure the worst jobs are always saved for the people at the very bottom. It's pillars like these that lock everyone into place. But look, this structure isn't just a theory in a book, right? It's enforced every single day, through a kind of unwritten social script that everyone is just expected to know and follow. Wilkerson uses this brilliant metaphor. We're all cast in a play we never auditioned for, assigned these roles from birth. And she points out the double meaning of the word cast, like the cast you put on a broken arm to hold the bones in a fixed position. That's what the social cast does. It holds every one of us in our designated spot. So what happens when someone seems to step outside of their assigned role? The boundaries get policed, and it's often by ordinary people. Wilkerson brings up so many modern examples, like those two African-American men who were arrested in a Philadelphia Starbucks just for waiting for a friend. Or the black graduate student at Yale who had the campus police called on her for the crime of napping in the common room of her own dorm. Or the countless stories we've all seen of people being challenged, questioned, or kicked out of community pools. Wilkerson argues these aren't just isolated incidents. They're modern-day examples of people policing the caste system, reinforcing an unwritten rule that says certain people just don't belong in certain spaces. Okay, so all of this brings us right up to the present moment, a moment that Wilkerson sees as a huge critical turning point for America, and it's all being driven by a massive demographic shift. And it all comes down to this one year, 2042. That's the year the U.S. Census Bureau projects that, for the first time in the country's history, white Americans will no longer be the demographic majority. That is a truly unprecedented moment. And this shift forces an existential question on the country. As the numbers change, will the old caste system just find new ways to reform itself, to maintain that old hierarchy? It's done that before. Or is this an opportunity to finally see the structure for what it is and choose to build something different, something more equitable? And this is the final thought Wilkerson leaves us with. The point here isn't about blame. None of us alive created this system. But she says, once we become aware of it, once we can actually see the house we're all living in with its cracked foundations and its tilted pillars, then it becomes our shared responsibility to act. The first and most crucial step is simply learning to see.